For Chef Jonathan Eisman, Pacific is the key word. His two restaurants, Pacific Time in Miami and Pacific Heights in Coral Gables, feature his inventive Asian American cuisine. Recognized in Esquire and Bon Appetit, he's a proponent of South Florida cookery, like steamed clams in wasabi broth.
Steamed whitewater clams in wasabi broth. First thing we have to do is make the wasabi broth. And to make that, we're going to take 1 gallon of water. The Hayashi wakame green seaweed. The wasabi powder. The dashi powder. And the salt. Okay, now we have to take that over to the stove. And that's going to need to come up to a full boil for a couple of minutes. You have to whisk it in very thoroughly to dissolve the dashi powder and the wasabi. Dashi powder is a dehydrated soup base. It's kind of the bouillon cube of the Eastern world, and we use a particular one which is called Dashi no Moto, and it has no artificial ingredients in it. It's all natural. Most of the Japanese products, if they say no moto, it'll have no artificial ingredients. Okay, so we need to let that come up to a boil, and after that's done, we're going to have to let it settle and separate. Okay, so after that wasabi broth has come to a full simmer, we transfer it into a tall cylinder because it needs to separate in color. Vibration is a key factor. It has to be a non-vibration area, otherwise it's going to kind of keep staying pretty cloudy. You can barely see in this container, but it has separated. We've ladled off the top portion of it, which is the clear broth, slowly off to the top. And that's the part that we're going to use for the recipe. You have to make more of this broth than you will use in the recipe because you have a lot of sediment which is going to go to the bottom. So this is the part that we're going to reserve and use in the rest of the recipe. And that's that. So the next stage, we need to steam the clams. And we have these whitewater clams, which are a Florida variety. You can use a little neck clam or a manila clam or anything like that. I'm going to place those in the pot. And to that we add the dry sake. And we put that on the stove. And that needs to get covered. Okay, and we leave that on there. You need to let this come up to a full boil. You'll still see the steam coming out. At that point, you want to let them cook for about 5 minutes, giving them an occasional shake. Then we'll shut it off, and we'll wait for the clams to open. So we're going to have to wait for that to cook right now. So we have our steam. At that point, we're going to let them go for 5 minutes, which they have now gone. And they are open, so we can turn off the heat. Let them sit here and finish, helps them steam properly. You want to be careful because they are little clams that you don't overcook them. They can get rubbery. So you just want to gently cook them. A couple of minutes after the shells have opened, generally they're ready to go. So we can remove the cover. And we're going to take the clams out to a nice pan here. The more clams you cook, you have to be careful that you don't just dump them into a bowl or a pan and create a big pile because the heat will allow them to keep cooking. This allows them to cool down pretty quickly. You can see you have a nice tender cooked clam there. These clams are so small also if they're overcooked they're going to shrink. And we need to take some more of the Hayashi wakame, the green seaweed, and we're just going to scatter a little bit on the bottom of the bowl. And this is really just going to keep the clams from moving around. You really don't want to use too much, because it'll overpower the wasabi broth with the seaweed flavor, and you really want that wasabi flavor to come through. So that's really about it. It's just a bare covering in the bottom of the bowl. And this dish should be oven proof also, because we are going to put it in the oven. And now we're going to separate the clams. And what we need to do is just remove one section of the shell. Occasionally you'll have a clam which isn't fully open. You need a teaspoon or something, just give it a little help. So now we need to separate the clam from the shell, and a teaspoon or a little espresso spoon is good, and you can just go under the muscle in the back and remove it. And we put them back into the shells after they're loosened. Occasionally also you'll have a chipped shell, and you can just discard that one and use one of the pieces that you separated. Now I'm going to arrange them into the bowl. Okay, at this point we're going to take this separated wasabi broth that we made, give it a little stir, and this you want to ladle over the clams. And you need to put in enough to fill the shells. But not so much that they start to float around in the bowl. It's kind of a fine line there.
Each clam is topped with lime and pickled ginger, then put into a 375-degree oven.
And that needs to stay in the oven for about 3-4 minutes. That's about all it takes. And you need to tell the guest when they're eating this to make sure that they get the clam with the ginger and the lime all in the same bite. You don't want to go with a cocktail fork. You want to use a spoon or actually eat these with your hands.